Good evening, listeners, brave navigators of the enigmatic and the concealed. Have you ever felt the pull of the unanswered, the allure of the mysteries that shroud our existence? For more than a decade, a unique comic publisher has dared to dive into these mysteries, unafraid of the secrets they might uncover. This audacious entity is Paranoid American. Welcome to the mystifying universe of the Paranoid American podcast.
Launched in the year 2012, Paranoid American has been on a mission to decipher the encrypted secrets of our world. From the unnerving enigma of MK Ultra mind control to the clandestine assemblies of secret societies. From the awe-inspiring frontiers of forbidden technology to the arcane patterns of occult symbols in our very own pop culture. They have committed to unveiling the concealed realities that lie just beneath the surface. Join us as we navigate these intricate landscapes, decoding the hidden scripts of our society and challenging the accepted perceptions of reality.
Folks, I've got a big problem on my hands. There's a company called Paranoid American making all these funny memes and comics. Now, I'm a fair guy. I believe in free speech as long as it doesn't cross the line. And if these AI-generated memes dare to make fun of me, they're crossing the line.
This is your expedition into the realm of the extraordinary, the secret, the shrouded. Come with us as we sift through the world's grand mysteries, question the standardized narratives, and brave the cryptic labyrinth of the concealed truth. So strap yourselves in, broaden your horizons, and steel yourselves for a voyage into the enigmatic heart of the Paranoid American podcast, where each story, every image, every revelation brings us one step closer to the elusive truth.
Yo, this is going to be a little bit of a chill episode. My homie Donut gave me some of the best advice recently. And I'm sorry if you've already heard me say this a few times, but I really do love it and I take it to heart. And he said that right before shows, he imagines that like he's actually on fire. Like he's got his head on fire, his body's on fire, just so that when he starts up the show, he's got like that I'm on fire energy. And I love that. But also, I'm not going to do that today. I was about to do it, but yo, we got like the most chill homie in the house today, Esoteric Eddie. And I just got to say, first of all, welcome. I'll let you introduce yourself in a second. But Esoteric Eddie is super dope. I met him through Juan. We were on, I don't even know what the hell podcast it was, but I immediately clicked because I just realized this different approach where so many people get into occultism and esotericism, and it's like I don't know, they go to like various extremes, right? They either like go hog wild on a certain topic, or they'll start to become like scared and start doing like the fear porn thing. So, anyways, like Esoteric Eddie is literally the chillest dude that I know when it comes to occult research and esoteric research. Like I feel like we're just kicking back in like a smoky bar and we've got like cognacs and there's like jazz playing in the background or something. But yeah, welcome to the show, Esoteric Eddie. I'm excited to get into this one.
What's up, man? Thank you for having me here. Super happy to be here. It's hilarious. The chillest dude in esotericism. It's funny you say that because I was at the court yesterday. Let me just say that. And I was like doing some paperwork stuff. And the lady was like, "Are you always this calm?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess." I don't know.
I like that there was the trick by Jim Brewer. You just get your license, your DMV photo taken, like when you're just blasted off. So that way, if you ever get pulled over and they see you, it's like, oh, I guess you're normally like this. All right. You're the oddball. Well, yeah. First of all, where can people find Esoteric Eddie? What are your links? Like where does people need to go? We'll do plugs up front.
Yeah, absolutely. Long form content. YouTube, Esoteric Eddie TV. If you want to connect with some short form content and just see my personal life and all kinds of stuff, Instagram would be the best place, and that's at Esoteric Eddie. And you can pretty much get everything else, including those two, on my website at esotericeddie.com.
That's dope. You got the esotericeddie.com. I like it. I love the name. Like, when was the first time you started saying Esoteric Eddie? Did someone give you that name? Did you come up with it?
I just gave it to myself. I've lived many lives in this life as an artist. I've had a lot of incarnations as an artist throughout my life, and so being an artist, you got to come up with names, as you know. And when I chose that name, I wanted to go with something that had my name in it, Eddie, because I moved away from hip hop. I was doing hip hop for many years, and I felt like hip hop was very egotistical, and I just wanted to be myself. And so I knew I wanted to have Eddie in there, but I had to add something else just to make it more marketable, I felt. And so I was like, well, whatever. I mean, all the stuff that I do centers around esotericism one way or another. So I was like, let me just be Esoteric Eddie. And I didn't think much of it other than that, but it just stuck. It stuck, and that's who I am. And I think it was a good decision.
What was the rapper name?
I went primarily for like 10 years. I went under Professed MC.
And did you have any like albums out, any collabs or anything that people could go and ferret out?
I'm not gonna promote any of that. I'm just gonna say, if you're very curious, just go find it yourself, because
Okay.
and I only say that because, like, I just really don't identify with that. It made me who I am today, and I'm appreciative of that time in my life. I mean, all my music was the same style of art. All the music I made was centered around esotericism, occultism, conspiratorialism. I just feel like it's just cringy to me, if I'm being honest. If I go back and listen to my old music, a lot of it's just cringy to me. I feel like I could have done a better job as a music artist. But it's okay. You can't change the past. And I made a huge impact on a lot of people out here in San Diego and Southern California and worldwide. To this day, many people still know me as Professed MC. Matter of fact, in the short 3 years that I've been Esoteric Eddie or have been working under that brand, I made, I think, a bigger impact than I did as Professed MC, but I did make a huge cultural and community impact as that artist as well.
Is there anything that you learned in like the world of being a hip hop artist that you've been able to carry over into what you're doing now with like podcasting and just research?
Oh yeah, I learned a lot, dude. I learned a lot of how to be an independent artist, how to build community, how to market, all of that. I was putting together events when I was in high school. I was making the flyers myself, booking the artists myself, hosting the events myself, with help with a little bit of help with my friends and stuff like that too. But yeah, independent artist, and I've been that way my entire life. I mean, I'm a business owner now, so my entire life I've been an independent thinker and self-motivated person, and so that's just translated all throughout my life in different aspects, and definitely in who I am and what I do with Esoteric Eddie. It's all independent research, highly motivated work that I do.
And you said that even when you did the music, it was all about like occultism and esoteric information. So where did that all start from?
Oh,
When did you first get into it all?
Well, I like to say my entire life has revolved around this stuff, because it really has. I mean, some of my earliest memories, some of my core memories have to do with me questioning religion and the Bible. Like, I'll give you one example, and then we'll kind of jump forward into where it all specifically began. But like, one of the first 5 memories I have is of me walking into the church daycare. And as I'm walking into the church daycare, I must have been like 5 or 6 years old, somewhere around there. I remember seeing this huge painting, or what was a huge painting to me at that time, of Jesus Christ staring over all of us little kids. And I didn't know who that was. And I was just like, who is this guy? And like, why is he everywhere? And so, feeling a strange curiosity, and my entire life would proved to revolve around those questions, those experiences. But more specifically, I started really, really diving into all of this stuff right around the age of 12 and 13 years old, when I started rapping pretty heavily, started listening to a lot of underground hip hop that was talking about this stuff, Immortal Technique, Jedi Mind Tricks, nonfiction, on and on, the Children of Babylon. And right around that same time, I started smoking cannabis, started doing psychedelic mushrooms, and started reading a lot of material and watching a lot of material, just the classics. Right around that time, I got into Alex Jones, I got into David Icke, I started reading books by Zechariah Sitchin, Bob Frisell, Drunvalo Melchizedek, just a lot of the classics.
I mean, that's a lot of heavy hitters to just be jumping into. And if I'm scratching my brain in the right way, this sounds like 98 through 2003-ish. Like that's kind of where Jedi Mind Trick, Violent by Design, I think, came out in like the very late 90s, right?
Yeah. Well, I was 12 and 13 around 2006 to 2008. So like those eras, those were like my core eras of getting into the.
Okay. So we're probably split by maybe like a decade. Because I remember when those were coming out, and I saw that you just recently had an interview with, was it Sabak or was it Gore-Tex?
Gore-Tex.
And like, how did that like how did you reach out to Gore-Tex in particular? And is there just like any highlights that you really liked from that particular interview?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Gore-Tex is a member of the crew Nonfiction, and they're very heady and conspiratorial. One of my favorite artists and groups of all time. Well, I reached out to him years ago when I was still doing music to do a feature, asked him to do a feature, and he's a real cool dude. Like he'll get back to you pretty quickly. And so I've been in like small contact with him since I was doing music back in like 2014, on and off, just kind of sharing stuff. And but now that I was doing this, I was like, oh, that'd be super awesome to interview him, because I know that he knows a lot of this stuff and was talking about this stuff early on in the 90s. So I just reached out again and told him, hey man, like, how can we make this happen? Whatever you need, let me know. And he was very accommodating and basically just did it, for free. And it was an amazing conversation, dude. Cause like, I mean, I wanted to like hear his story on knowledge, not just the music. We touched a little bit on music, but what surprised me is he had lot of ghosts throughout his life, and I wasn't expecting that. And yeah, it was cool to hear him tell the story of how he got into conspiracies. And for him, it was mostly 9/11. Well, before that, actually in the 90s, he was reading like a lot of Bill Cooper, Behold the Pale Horse and stuff like that, and just always knew that stuff was kind of real. But he saw the towers be hit like from his apartment, and that, of course, was shocking. And he claimed that, it's caused him to spiral into a conspiratorial mindset and try to figure out what the fuck happened. And he said that he pretty much put it all together within a few months, and just knew it was all BS, and knew that it was just some nefarious agenda from the New World Order elites.
Yeah, I guess that there is kind of like different phases when you get into conspiracies. The first phase is sort of like, oh, this is interesting. Like, yeah, I get this. And then you realize that there's a consistent theme going on too of, what is it? Surveillance and false flags and black ops. And like all of a sudden the theme, and then you're like, oh, this is like a whole genre. Like there's whole albums and movies that tap into this thing. But then there's like a certain moment in time when you're like, damn, bro, like all that's real. Like like all the surveillance everywhere, it really is everywhere. And all the false flags and the black ops, like all that is real, and that the movies are just kind of giving you a tiny little insight of like one version of that. So I don't like, a lot of people might not even be all the way over on it's all real, or it's like, okay, the one thing's real, like the JFK assassination. Okay, maybe that's real, but all this other stuff, you know what I mean? Yeah. And there's a quote by a comedian named Ron Funches, and he's got a really good routine. I won't retell the joke, but the point that he makes is like, are you like, find somebody that says no conspiracy theory is true. Like that would be the most wild reality, that if every single official story was all the right story. Like we got a 1,000 batting average, right? Like we're just killing it. I don't think that's the case. So
yeah, I know exactly what skit you're talking about. I've seen that one. He's like, I don't know if he curses in it, but he says like, "Bitch, you don't believe in no conspiracies."
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that one. He's hilarious.
There's almost like a spectrum now. Like how many like what percentage of the conspiracies out there do you think you would fall? And I know some people that are damn near in the 80s and 90s. You know what I mean? Like anything that comes around, it's like, oh yeah, that's true. And that's true. You know what I mean? And then you got like skeptics. So where would you fall on the spectrum? Do you got any idea?
Yeah, I would say at this point, the older I get, the more I'm just in the middle. I'm like 50-50. You know, I consider myself a realist when it comes to politics and religion. I'm a centrist. You know, a realist, a centrist, not so much a skeptic, but I just have to look at it for myself, you know, and see what's going on.
And what's that compared to 15 years ago? Where would you be on the scale 15 years ago?
Dude, 15 years ago, I was like definitely like a 100.
Yeah, there was nothing that was off limits.
Nothing, dude. Yeah, 15 years ago.
And flat Earth.
Both of them at the same time. Yeah.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like when I first got into stuff, I was like freaking out, and I used to like do these presentations for like my family. Like I thought I had to go educate the world. I was like, yeah, educating my family, my friends, strangers. And what me and my friend would do sometimes during classes, we'd get like sticky notes and we'd just write on there like research Planet X, research the Anunnaki, research Illuminati.
That's a friend.
Yeah, we'd go post them around everywhere, and yeah, dude, it was hilarious. Like I was a crazy guy. My friends sometimes would have me like tour the school. They'd like pull me around, like, dude, you got to tell these people this shit. Like, tell them that shit about the aliens that you're saying. And I would do these like little fucking preaching presentations about conspiracies.
I love this, man. That's awesome. I wonder, it's interesting too, because when you were talking about, you got into David Icke, right? And like Alex Jones, like David Icke in particular, like Alex Jones, a lot of people, the earlier ones, like Police State and like the Secrets of Bohemian Grove, like those ones were kind of self-explanatory. You know what I mean? Like, but David Icke, bro, I remember putting in a David Icke video and trying to show some of my friends, and like some of those were like 4 or 5 hours. And it wasn't like, it's not the same like WWF, like punch you in the face, check it out, they're coming to get us. Like that Alex Jones, like pacing is just like a dude on a stage for 4.5 hours talking about the Caucasus Mountains and like all this Zechariah Sitchin sort of stuff. And man, like, I don't know, like that had like zero friends in real life that would like sit down for 4.5 hours and watch David Icke with me. Like most people would watch the Alex Jones and get all worked up and everything, but and then I realized, man, like maybe I'm crazy. Like, what is it that I could sit down and watch like a Michael Sarion, like an 8-hour, you know, DVD, Oracles and Origins, and no one else I know, friends, family, no one was like, hell yeah, I'll be there with you. Like, I'm jealous that you had a friend that's like, let's take notes. You know what I mean? Everyone was after like the 3rd hour, people were like, all right, bro, I'm going to go and play some GTA or something. Come on. That's what you want.
Well, that's actually an interesting question. You know, what was it about us that like made us, be able to sit there and really digest the stuff? But I will say that the friend that I mentioned earlier, he was actually the first functioning meth addict that I met. So that might say a lot. I don't know.
I mean, maybe I don't think there's been any real sort of trend in all the people that I've met that have been either sober or drug addicts or straight edge. Like it always surprises me, the ones that are like, oh yeah, I know 9/11 was an inside job. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's the cracked out meth head that's just like, nah, bro, that's BS. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know, but all the weird hallucinations they're having are real. You know? Yeah, no, that's BS.
Be, man.
But my neighbor is definitely spying on me.
Where are you at? And I've got a segment we'll do towards the end of this show where we'll ask a whole bunch of like a variety of questions, but I'm curious about where you're at now on like simulation theory.
Yeah. Well, I just released my third book last year called The Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion. It's also a documentary version of it you can watch on my YouTube. And it basically centers around the whole idea of the simulation and consciousness. And um, I definitely lean more towards this being a simulation, but not the way that most people might think. I don't think like we're in some video game or whatever. I simply just analyzed life in general, biological life and the quantum life, if you will. And what I concluded was that everything boils down to a systematic, uh, computated format at the quantum level is running off of very systematic, mathematical, geometric, computative, uh, formats at the quantum level, and it fractalizes outward and creates the macro world that we live in. One simple example that I use, and it's a very simple example that I think we might just kind of overlook, but it's pretty impactful when you think about it. And that example is that it takes about 9 months for a baby to be born, give or take the days, weeks, but roughly speaking, it's always 9 months. And so that alone, it's like life is consistently running off of these hard set mathematical equations that you can bet $100 on, $1,000,000 on. You plant a seed, it's going to grow, it's going to fractalize outward from a seed to a sprout to a little tree to a big tree, and then the tree fractalizes over to a branch to a twig, so on and so forth. So everywhere you look, everything is systemized through mathematical and geometric computative systems everywhere. And so to me, that tells me that this entire world, this entire universe is running off of a program or a simulation. It's all programmed by the very definition. When you plant a seed or when you inseminate a woman, through love, self-sufficient. Everything's a self-sufficient program around us. And so that tells me that there's a programmer, a simulator, who we all call the creator or God, Allah, whatever you want to call it. But, I call it the creator. And so I think that we're living in the creator's program, its simulation. And then from there, that's where all the spin-off conspiracies begin. Okay, is it a benevolent simulation? Are we here for good purposes, good reasons, or are we put here by some weird, nefarious entity like Yaldabaoth or the demiurge, so on and so forth. But at the very least, I have concluded for myself that we are definitely living in a program, and this program is simulated in the sense that everything around us is actually a holographic projection from the quantum realm.
So, I like the fractal explanation here, and this one was one of my friends, Zertis, put me onto this, and I've latched onto it a little bit, and I know that all of this is just like approximations, like even all of our math and all the geometry that we're even talking about, that's just like our monkey brains trying to quantize things into representations that we understand that'll never really represent the real thing. Like we're just kind of getting like these, like our sketches of it, like the sketch is never going to be the thing. But the way that I used to think about infinite realities and like these infinite timelines, I guess that I was this was sort of like a naive approach to it, right? But let's say that we live in this world where there's infinite timelines, and I'm driving to work and I get to work at 7:00 a.m., right? Like right on dot. Well, there's a reality where I got there a second early, a second late, 2 seconds early, 2 seconds late, like all those different permutations. And then there's a version where I ran into a wall. There's a version where like I went and like bust someone out of jail. There's a version where a plane hit me, like all those. And then he was kind of explaining like it's not necessarily like that. It's more of like a fractal. Like a fractal doesn't just start and then just turn into like a complete color fill, right? Like the fractal repeats its pattern. So there are some places that the fractal won't kind of get into. So it's not like a true infinity in that like every possible thing that could ever happen is always happening. It's more like it follows this path that you're explaining, where like the seed turns into the tree, and the tree makes a seed, and the seed makes a tree, and that kind of just goes on for infinity. And that's sort of the version of infinity that we have in our grasp. And maybe not the version where like a plane hits the tree and like the tree grows out of the plane. Like maybe those weird sci-fi interdimensional things where like physics are inverted and all that. Maybe it's not like that. I don't know. But I've come around to, I think, a more mature understanding of it. But I have to ask you, because this is the most annoying question ever. But like, who created the creator then, or who programmed the program? Like, how far is it? Just turtles all the way up? Just programs all the way up?
Oh man, dude! If I knew, I'm pretty sure I would be a billionaire or something. Either a billionaire or a complete crazy person unable to handle the truth. But I whatever created us, I don't pretend to know what it is, like most religions do. I don't pretend to know who it is. I'm just thankful for it, and I call it the creator. But it is mind blowing when you think about the creator, because it's like, who created it? And in my book, The Crystal Lattice Mind Illusion, I kind of break down what all of the major mythological tales say about the creator and the point of the universal creation. And what I found that was interesting is that all of them basically meant the three same elements of creation. They all say that there was a watery darkness in the beginning, some sort of watery darkness, which I call the cosmic ether. And then after the watery darkness, there was the first consciousness, the self-created being, whom we call God. And then those two created the physical world that we live in, the simulation, with the power of vibration or sound, like in the. And that's true all across the board in most major mythological tales. So those three elements are universal in all creation stories: the watery darkness, the self-created being, and then physical life being created through vibration or sound. And it's interesting because quantum mechanics tells us the exact same thing. Quantum physics tells us the exact same thing, that at the very quantum level, at the most minute level, we have wave channels. We have this etheric force that combines everything, which we call the fifth force, this unknowable fifth force, the cosmic ether. And then with the fifth force, we have consciousness, which animates everything. Everything is animated through its consciousness, through its ego systems. Some things are more conscious than others, of course, and that's a whole other thing that I'd also dive into. And then together with those two, physical life is created through vibration. And we now know that because at the very minute level of the physical world, everything is just vibrating particles. That's all it is. It's just vibration. It's frequency levels that fractalize outward and create their specific things that they will be. Like, whether it's a dog, a tree, or a person, at the minute level, it's just vibrating particles that are programmed to fractalize outward and create that specific holographic thing. And so all I know for sure about the creator is that
If we were to like consider that vibration like a technology, right? Do you think that humans now or at any point in history have also had that technology, or is it something outside of our understanding or grasp?
we've definitely tapped into that technology throughout. And if at the very least, we've been studying it. And I know that for a fact. And again, I get into that in my book. There are documents that are now declassified going back to the 70s, 50s, even having to do with NASA and other military industrial complex organizations studying anti-gravity technology. And they're amazing when you read them. For example, the NASA one from the 70s that I go over talks about them trying to tap into this fifth force and realizing at that time that if we were able to tap into this fifth force that interconnects all things throughout the universe, we would be tapping into an infinite fuel source, and if we could create ships or systems that run off of that fuel source, it would be like sailing a boat through an ocean that runs on water. It could endlessly run. And so the implications of that are very powerful.
An ionosphere, but in like a different realm almost, right?
So you broke up there. What was that?
Yeah, I was just saying it sounds like an ionosphere where like that's what Tesla was trying to tap into for free energy, but this is like as opposed to some energy field that surrounds the earth, we're talking about like an energy field that all living beings kind of share, but that you could tap into it for like an energy supply.
Yeah. It's also known as 0 point energy. And Tesla was talking about this, and I get into him in the book too, because before he passed away in the late 30s, he gave this strange speech. And in that strange speech, he claims to have made two very unique and mind-blowing and earth-shattering discoveries, which he was going to tell us, but he was still developing. But he alludes to what he found out, and he says that these discoveries have, number one, have to do with all of life from the macro to the micro level, and number two, that gravity and all he knew about gravity were incorrect, and that what he realized about gravity was going to change the way we view it forever. And other than that, he's also referred to humans as being a little spiritual machines, or spirit machines. He understood that our mind and our bodies were separate things, and when they work together, they create the spiritual machine. It was not our responsibility per se, but our privilege to be able to master the physical world around us. And so when you kind of put all that together, I believe, and also he also talked about the cosmic ether as well. He related it to Hindu mythology and Hindu and Vedantic philosophy. And so he knew also that there was this underlying force, which we call the fifth force or the 0 point energy. He knew that was existing throughout the universe. And so it's my belief that when you piece all that together, the discovery that he made was that this underlying force that combines everything throughout the universe is actually consciousness. And that is actually what is driving this entire experience. And so yeah, this energy force that these elite scientific organizations around the world that have been trying to uncover permeates all physical life. It's sort of like a universal internet that just kind of that moves through everything, and it's everywhere. And so if we could find a way to harness it to create that 0 point energy, pull in energy from anywhere in the universe, then yeah, we would be tapping into an infinite fuel source that we could do so much with. And I kind of think that if these UFOs that we're seeing around the world, if they are real, whether they're extraterrestrial or human, I think that they have found a way to kind of tap into that. And that's how they're able to defy the laws of gravity and physics, is because they're tapping into that fifth force 0 point energy field.
I'm just thinking in like the law of thermodynamics or whatever. Like energy cannot be created or destroyed. Part of me, this sounds silly, and you might not even seen it. There's like a movie called Blood Car where they develop a way to run cars off of blood instead of oil, because like there's an oil shortage. But then the problem is like how bad do you really want to go to the store? Like, are you willing to fill up your gas tank with some blood? Because like it's a finite supply, and you can't just use it endlessly. Even if there's a quote unquote endless supply, you got to be mindful of how much you use. And then people that are greedy are just like, well, I'll go and, I'll just go fill up my car real quick and, do unscrupulous things. So if there's a potential that consciousness could be an energy source, like is Exxon out there and just using up like, what could potentially be human consciousness, but they're just using it to like, operate their HR department or something? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange implication, and no pun intended, but I still can't really wrap my mind around it, like fully. And this whole thing of consciousness and reality and physical experience is so strange, man. And one person whose work I analyzed for my book was that of a brain surgeon, a neurosurgeon by the name of Carl Pribram, whose work is pretty mystical. Some of his writings are pretty mystical, I think. And after many decades of performing brain surgery, he realized that the brain and the mind are two different things, and he created this theory called the holonomic brain theory, in which he believes that the brain and the mind act together the same way a holographic system would. And to him, in short, the brain was the photo scan or the photo image on the glass plate. That's the brain, which contains the information, the program. And then the mind is like the laser that hits that photosensitive plate and then creates. And so he believes that's the same process or a similar process that the brain and the mind have. The mind is entering the brain, and then it's projecting or experiencing the specific program that is in that brain or in that body. And so it's a strange thing that's happening here. It's a strange experience that we're having. And so if these like reptilian elites or whatever are real, if these archonic forces out there are real, they're probably, but they've understood this science differently than we have. And they definitely have at the very least of the level, at the very basic of levels, right? Like these shadowy elite or whatever around the world have understood at the very basic level that you can manipulate people through subliminal imaging. You can manipulate people through sub audio programming, all that subconscious indoctrination and subconscious programming is a part of that science having to do with consciousness, the mind, the quantum mechanics. And so if I'm not smart enough to like really get into all of that, I'm just dumb enough to study it and like see that there's something's going on. But if you were like highly if you were really good at math and science and all of that, and engineering, I'm sure there's a way that you could really tap into all of this stuff in a way where you could literally siphon energy from people's minds and brains.
I like the analogy of it being like a laser. Like I guess consciousness is like a laser, and the brain's almost like a prism, or that's kind of how like a CD player, like a laser disc would work, right? So I'm just wondering, is the laser coming from the pineal gland? Like, where's the laser coming from, you think?
Gland, I see the pineal gland as being the receiver. It's kind of like the crystal receiver where the mind is coming into. And that's the way I see it. And the pineal gland is a strange thing that we don't fully understand yet. I mean, its simple medicinal purpose is described as being as having the purpose of producing melatonin. Of allowing us
sleep
to sleep.
Regulation and like a circadian rhythm, I think, is related.
Yeah, but what's strange about it is it has a bunch of crystals in it. We've recently found it has a bunch of strange crystals in it, which we don't fully understand the purposes of yet. And so to me, it's like a receiver of the soul. That's what I think. I think it's the receiver of the mind. And it's because interesting, it has to do with sleep. And so sleeping and dreaming is like next to living this experience. So it's interesting that it has that functionality of sleeping and dreaming, because that's like the only other form of consciousness that we know that exists aside from psychedelics. And again, when we do psychedelics, it also tends to activate that area. And when we do certain yogic methods like breath work and Kundalini awakening, it also activates that area. So it has something to do with the mind and tapping into other dimensions or other perceptions of reality.
You were kind of saying before that you're not necessarily a follower of like a particular religion, but I'm wondering, like, let's say you're in a room and you're feeling around, and every religion is kind of like, cold and hot. Like you're getting cold, you're getting hot. Like what religions would be the most like you're getting warm, and which ones would be like the most you're getting cold? Like if you had to pick one, gun to head, and they were like, which one is the closest to where you think you might be, even if it's far away? Which is the closest?
I would say the Vedantic systems, the Hindu systems. I mean, that's like a broad term, the Hindu religion, but because there's like different schisms, just like Christianity. But I'd say the warmest would be the Vedantic systems, and then the coldest. I'm just gonna say right now, the Catholic style of Christianity.
He doesn't mean that, Father. He doesn't mean that. Have mercy on his soul.
I grew up in a Catholic home, and trust me, it pains me to say that because like my dad's whole side of my dad's side of the family is Catholic, and there's a huge pride there with Catholicism, and so it hurts my heritage to say that. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, dude, I got to be honest, and real, like just what they're doing over there at the Vatican, and it's just a little crazy and silly.
You know how many Hail Marys you're gonna have to say after all that, man? Like you're gonna be in there for a while, dude.
Hail Mary. One quick.
That was my upbringing too. Was Roman Catholic, and honestly, I don't know if like I don't have to answer my own question. That's one of the benefits I'm being on the side of asking them. But I definitely see what you mean. And there was a point in time when I felt the most close to like the Vedic teaching. Like I had just read the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, and I think, dude, like I was like a lot of Catholics. You go to Catholic school, you ask the questions, you get your wrist slapped, and it's like, oh, well, my question, just like you remember when you were 5 or 6. My question was, well, if you go to hell and you burn, like, wouldn't you get used to it after like a week? You know what I mean? Like how, like if you're never going to die from it and it's just hot, like at a certain point, it's like jumping into a hot tub, I guess. So they don't like questions in Catholic school, and you find that out real quick. And that's why I remember that so distinctly, because it was like, but I'm in school. We're not allowed to ask questions in school. And then you realize, oh, it's not really school, It was like daycare, which is what you called it, which made way more sense than Sunday school.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so I guess the Vedic and the Upanishads from the Catholic and not being able to ask questions, I was almost like agnostic turning atheist. And then I read Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, and there's this one question the dude's asking, God, is it Shiva or is it Krishna? I can't remember. I think it's Shiva, right, in the book. But he's talking to him, and he basically says
like Christ figure.
Yeah, he's talking to this God figure, and he basically tells him, or he's saying, and it was like it's approaching it from this guy's trying to disprove God, but he's talking to God, but he's like, I don't believe you. You know what I mean? And one of those questions, and I'm paraphrasing, that God asked back to him, he's like, all right, well, if everything is just like what makes sense, then why is there something rather than nothing? Like, wouldn't it make more sense if there was just nothing? If everything was just based on absolute reason and logic and kind of Occam's razor. And no, they don't cite Occam's razor in the Vedic, books, but like that's kind of the premise that I read from it. And I couldn't ever shake that, man. It was like, that's kind of legit. Like, why is there even a single atom or a single particle? Why does the electron even exist? Like, it would make more sense if you were to just sit down logically and put it out on paper for just nothing to exist eventually. And maybe we're headed that way, but that was kind of what snapped me out of just straight up being atheist agnostic. So for a moment in time, I might have considered Vedic, but then I was like, I gotta learn how many gods. Like, like I could barely get my head around the one God and like his Son and the Holy Spirit and the Trinity thing. Like once I got those 3 down, and then you're like, wait, there's how many Marys? All right, I think I got the saints down, and I think I got the Trinity down. And then the Vedics were like, yo, we got like 700. I was like, I'm out.
Yeah, dude. Closer to understanding this, because really they're just systems. When you look at like the most ancient versions of the Vedantic philosophies and systems, they're just systems on how to utilize the mind and body. And so like they're actually practicing stepping into our mind and body to connect to God here, right now, in real time. Whereas all these other institutions, they don't teach you how to do any of that. They're just indoctrination systems that just teach you how to. You just sit there. I mean, I guess it's a weird form of Vedantic, of the Vedantic and yogic path. I mean, you're sitting there in church, so you got that part down, and then you're just kind of sitting, but you're just listening to them and getting indoctrinated. So the reason I like the Vedantic style is because it's mostly a practical system of spirituality that teaches you how to actually access God and build a connection with God right now in real time. It's less about religion and more about practicality. But later on, it turns into dogma like anything else. And then all the other like Western traditions they don't teach you any practicality, at all. You have to step outside of it to find that yourself. And to me, all religions, every single one of them, to me, they're just human ways that are designed to cope with life and our connection to. That's how I see them. They're nothing more than just humans, human-made systems designed to cope with life, God, and nature. And again, the Vedantic style is more practical. It shows you how you can actually use your mind and body to form deeper connections to life, God, and nature, where the other ones don't teach you that at all. That matter of fact, a lot of them take you to the exact opposite. They shut you out from God, life, and nature, and yourself, and they just indoctrinate you into this very narrow-minded version of all of those things.
I gotta get your opinion on Scientology, because that one is the one that feels like it might have a practical application, because they do biofeedback through the e-meters, and they do the like sessions where they try and suppress emotion, and then like the bull baiting where they use emotion against other people. So that one feels a little practical. It's a little kooky and out there. Like, what are your thoughts on Scientology in the context of all that?
Well, I haven't studied it deeply, but from just all the stuff that I've watched, I love watching like ex-Scientologists interviews and documentaries and stuff like that. And, so I've seen like content and I've read stuff out on online or whatever out there. But although it may have practical uses, I don't agree practical uses, or how it goes about teaching those practical uses, because they're obviously not teaching you those practical usages or methods to better you. The only reason they're teaching you those is to like bring veracity to their religion. So they're just saying like, hey, look, we can teach you these practical reasons or these practical methods of connecting with God and yourself, but it all has to do with our alien gods over here who we're really excited to teach you about, So it's just falling right back into dogma, dogma.
You got to pay a big chunk of money before they tell you about the alien part, though. Like that, they kind of let that one out for free through South Park and all the forums. But I got a feeling that used to be like a high ticket item now.
Oh yeah, imagine that, right? You're like sitting there after being there for years, and like, are you ready? And like it's like smoke and all this craziness. It's like God is actually an alien, and you're just like, whoa! Like now it's just like fucking Ancient Aliens is on TV. Like my 8-year-old nephew can tell me more about Ancient Aliens and all that than most of these people can.
I mean, if you can actually have any of the powers they ascribe to being clear and having like OTA clearance, then I'd believe that there's a freaking, God alien living in a volcano or whatever the hell the final story is, because they ascribe some pretty supernatural kind of abilities of like never getting sick, like mental illness just doesn't exist, period, because you've cleared all the thetans out of your body. I don't know. I love that particular concept of it. And then I'm also wondering, like, what about the magic aspect of all this? Because there's a lot of, I guess, cults and sort of like folk religions and things that don't fit neatly into, the big box religions, but they promise very similar stuff. And like, is there any credit to any, like, let's say, Native Americans, like any of their religions, were they onto something? Or do you think it's just another flavor of, dogma?
It's all just human systems on how to cope with life, God, and nature. That's all it is. It's all it is. And some of them are more cool than others. Some of them are more aggressive than others. Some of them are more practical than others. And I think you just kind of get in where you fit in. You know, you resonate with whatever system shows results in your life. And so the Native American way, I imagine, was probably a very benevolent and peaceful way. And that made sense for those people, you know, like, yeah, it made sense for them because it showed real results in real time. And, but again, they're all just systems. They're all religions are man-made systems. And so the older I get, the more heady I become. I don't believe in anything man-made. I don't I don't follow or believe anything that is man-made. And you know what's wild? God is man-made. The idea of God is a man-made. It is a man-made system and belief and idea. But outside of our idea of God, the creator still exists. And the creator will continue to exist whether we are here or not. And so that is bigger than man. And so I don't believe in anything that is man-made. And unfortunately, all religious systems are man-made.
So I mean, not to get into the semantics, but I'm just curious, like, is there a God? And like, or is there no God, but there's a creator? And if so, then what's the difference between the creator and the God?
The main difference between the creator and God is that God is a man-made concept that actually limits the creator, the true creator. You know, it's like we all have our dads, right? I'm not sure what your relationship to your dad is.
He's chilling. We're cool.
Okay. You know, so it's like when we're kids, we have a certain idea of our dads. Right? And I feel like that's what God is. It's like we have this idea of our dads, but when we get older, we come to realize, oh, our dads are actually just guys like us who go through regular. We created this idea of God through our human systems of religion and dogma. And the funny thing is, it's like it's only been monotheistic for a short period of time. The first 4,000 to 5,000 years of our human existence in this current timeline, our idea of God was not monotheistic. It was polytheistic. But most religious systems also acknowledge that there was an ephemeral a force outside of everything, and that ephemeral force was the true creator. All the polytheistic gods just formed out of that. So everything came from the ephemeral, unknowable creator. The gods were simply born out of that the same way we were. And so, yeah, the main difference between God and the creator to me is that God is a false idea that we have anthropomorphized about the creator. You know, and it's so obvious. Like, it's so obvious that we would do that. You know, like we've taken the creator and then we brought him down here to our level and have told ourselves that it is a human, it is a anthropomorphized being that looks like us and is like us. But when you look around at nature and how wild this is, it's like, man, I don't think so. I think the creator is probably something we can't even fathom.
Does this make you like, is this evil? Like, does this make you the enemy of like fervent religious people? Like, do you find yourself at odds with people in the comments that are saying like, this guy doesn't believe in Jesus, you know, he's going to hell?
What's crazy is I've received way more love than I have negativity over the past 3 years that I've been working.
That's not crazy. I can see that, bro. Because you don't come across like you're angry or trying to be offensive or anything. Like, you seem like, oh, even if you're not, you seem like you're open as hell to any idea that comes up. So I feel like that kind of attracts love.
Yeah, and I am, dude. I am very open-minded, and I try to approach everything through a neutral academic perspective. But I have received some negativity, and I've had a couple Christian influencers respond or react to my content and kind of call me out and say that I'm wrong about the they're approaching it from a Christian perspective, and I fired back and I reacted to their reactions of my content, and they never reacted after that, so I don't know, but those, I mean, I'm not too interested in responding to just hateful stuff. I mean, that stuff's like whatever. It's all funny to me, honestly. Like, all of it's funny to me. But when people have genuine critiques about my work, like these two influencers did, that's what really interests me, because it's like to like really analyze the stuff and really get to the truth of it. And like, for example, this one dude who's like pretty big in the Christian academic space or whatever, he reacted to my video speaking on like the connection between the Elohim in the Old Testament and the Anunnaki and the Mesopotamian mythological tales. And he's just like snarkily said like, oh, well, looks like somebody discovered the divine council. And what he was referring to was this idea of a divine of Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, having this divine council of angels, right? And that's how most of these guys dismiss the anomaly in the Old Testament having to do with the word Elohim, which is a plural word. So in Genesis 1:26, when man is being created, the word that is used is Elohim, not God. So when you read it, it says, and then the Elohim said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. And so that has been an anomaly for biblical scholars for many, many, many years. And they've tried to explain it away by saying stuff like that's God speaking to Jesus, or that's God speaking to his divine counsel. And so again, this dude was reacting to my work saying, oh, well, looks like this guy discovered the divine counsel, like being snarky or whatever, as if the concept of the divine counsel nullifies my argument. But the funny thing is that the whole idea of the divine council, if we take that into account and validate it within Christianity, it would actually further prove my point. Because if you analyze the history of the divine council idea, the divine council idea goes back to the polytheistic religions of Canaan, and the polytheistic gods of Canaan were undeniably based on the Sumerian gods. So it's just hilarious to me, and it's like, look, man, I don't want to be the one who's debunking and deconstructing religion. It's just simply what happens when I do my work. And the funniest thing about it all, the most paradoxical thing about it all, is I actually am a believer in Christ. I don't worship or pray to anything other than Christ. And further than that, when I was 8 years old, my mom gave me a Bible and told me the story of King Solomon, and told me that if I was going to pray for anything in this life, pray for knowledge and wisdom and understanding. And I did just that. When I was 8 years old, I got on my knees and I prayed to God and asked him for wisdom and understanding. And that's probably part of the reason why my entire life has revolved around this stuff. And so I believe that, if God is real in the Christian sense of it, in the Judaic Abrahamic faith sense of my purpose here to dive into this stuff. For what ultimate reason, I don't know yet. My work is not completed. But yeah, man, I say all that to say, I get a lot of love. I do get some criticism and negativity, but the funny thing is like, I'm a believer in Christ too, and I'm doing all of this to elevate us, ultimately, to elevate us. Whether the truth is going to be hard to hear or not, I think the truth is still necessary for us to hear.
You were dropping some Bible verses, so I just gotta, how familiar are you with the Bible? You read it a few times, or?
Pretty familiar, grew up on it, and I've had to have had to read through it for all of my work. So pretty familiar. Right. Yeah.
And I think one of the shows we were on was with like a Bible expert. I can't remember his name. It was an amazing episode. I'm just horrible with names until I say them a bunch of times. But this is one of my go-to Bible questions. What do you think Ham or Cain saw in that tent? Like when they walked in on Noah, and they said that they saw him naked, and now he doesn't get to go on the ark, and no one in his family gets to go on the ark, and you get the curse of Ham / curse of Cain. Like, what happened in that tent?
Yeah, that's funny. I was talking to somebody about this recently. Well, the way it's interpreted, people interpret it that way, that like Ham tried to sexually molest or take advantage of Noah because Noah was drunk, which is a weird interpretation. But the way I interpret it is, well, Noah was drunk. And actually, real quick before I answer that, I love that story because the story of Noah, I think, is much more simple than people think it is. Actually, there's a hidden message in the story of Noah that I think is very powerful. After the whole flood and everything, after all that's done and they're finally relaxing, it is said in the Bible that Noah grows grapes and becomes a drunkard off of the wine of the grapes, and that he becomes this like disheveled old man who's kind of just sleeping nude in his tent. And then his son walks in on him and something happens, and that causes his dad to be infuriated and curse him in his line. And I think what happened is probably he just walked in on him and judged him, because he was like drunk and naked or whatever. He probably just judged him or whatever, or maybe it was just such a shame for him to walk in on his dad being naked and drunk. Or I think it was just something simple like that. But the powerful message in that is that despite Noah being this drunkard, God still had shifted my mind, because I realized, like, man, if I survived watching the entire world become consumed by a flood and die in front of my eyes, and then I had to survive that with my family for 40 days, I would probably become a drunk too, And so it made me have compassion for all the people that are out there in the streets right now who are surviving a flood in their mind. It's wild, right? One of God's most favored people, one of the patriarchs of our entire Judeo-Christian lineage, Noah, ended up being a drunk, and God still favored him because God knew what he had been through, and God understood that. He said, yeah, it's okay. I understand why my son has become the way he is. And for Ham to judge him, that's the curse. And so for me, the message is, don't judge people on how they cope with what they've been through. You don't understand the flood that they've had to go through.
Do you think that there's like some bar owners out there that have been kicking out the drunks at like last call, and like there might be some curses on their names and they don't even realize it?
Dude, maybe, man. I mean, the Bible, Jesus places a huge importance on not judging people, right? Do not cast the first stone, if you have not sinned or whatever. Huge way.
That, like the current legal system, right, is very much based on judgment. Like that's what our society kind of operates on. Even if it's like financial judgments, and if you don't pay your taxes, it starts in a courtroom and it'll end in a courtroom and then ends with you in jail or shot. But like all it has judgment. But there's also this quote of like, give unto Caesar, what is Caesar's. So I always wonder, like, does that judgment exist outside of normal judgment because it's Caesar's, like this is Caesar's court system? So does that mean he gets a pass, or is it still wrong? And like how much of the give unto Caesar's do you interpret?
It's a great question, man. It's a great question. I think ultimately what Jesus was saying is like, you can't go against the system ultimately, and there's no reason to go against this ultimately physically, right? But like in your mind, in your heart, definitely always rebel, and definitely always have Christ in your heart and your mind, because I mean, hey, like fight back if that's what you feel called to do. Like fight back if that's what you feel called to do. But I think ultimately what's more important is not playing into the system in your heart and your mind. right? It's like we all have for the proverbial Caesar, but understand that your real boss is God. Never be under the false illusion that your boss is the dude you're working for who's cutting your checks. That's all illusion. It's all illusion. The reality is, man, we're here because of the creator, and ultimately that's the boss that we have to report to, and that's the person who's going to cut our ultimate check. That's how I interpret it. It's like, do what you have to do here in Caesar's world and in the archonic system to make sure that you can still have that connection to God, and live a prosperous life with God in mind and in heart.
And I think this is my last Bible specific question. I do got another book question, but what do you think turn the other cheek meant? Is that a literal thing? Does that mean if like someone punks you, like let them punk you, or is there a different interpretation to it?
Dude, I think it pretty much means that, it's like it takes a lot to refrain from retaliating sometimes, and it's a wild thought to hug the person who wants to kill you. But if you were to retaliate with kindness, with love, with compassion, that would be so much more life many times. So if we just keep retaliating, it's like that old saying, an eye for an eye, the whole world will be blind, but I think Jesus was ultimately just trying to get us, trying to get us to like wake up to our nonsense, like what are we fighting for? What are we doing with ourselves when we could be living a heaven on earth? So I think ultimately the message was just, I think religion and religious people read too much into these things, and they build entire systems off of these things, and anyway, the Christians of the world, these Christian empires like America, don't really live by any of that stuff anyway. We're definitely not turning the other cheek with Iraq and Iran and all that other stuff. We're not turning the other cheek on our own people. We're waging full on war all across the globe. But for us who are really, really seeking the message, who are really seeking how to live a proper and prosperous life through the message, I think ultimately the message that he was trying to say was just start thinking about retaliating with compassion and kindness, and see how that works for you, and see what kind of results you get when you do that instead.
I find that like a very commendable approach to it. And I'm trying to get there. And I feel like part of the reason why I'm paranoid American, like the real version of paranoid American, like some of that paranoia is, again, ever since a kid, I've always wondered, like, man, if this book has for thousands of years been telling people essentially pay your taxes, and if the soldiers come and punch you, let them punch you and don't fight back. Damn, dude, like if I was running the government and I was writing a handbook and I got to say what God was telling the people to do, those are if there's 10 commandments, commandment 1 is pay your taxes. Commandment 2 is if the government comes and knocks on your door, just open the door. If they punch you, just let them punch your other cheek. And I know that that's such a pessimistic version of looking at it, which is the antithesis of like embrace everyone. And I understand very well that kind of paranoia is completely incompatible and might even be like a self-serving thing. But man, it just, I can't shake the feeling that the Bible might also just be like the handbook that was created by all the governments back in the day. And they're like, look, guys, like we need to get people kind of standardized a little bit. We need to figure out how to get all the cogs to connect together in the machine. So here's sort of a rough playbook, feel free to tweak it. Feel free to come up with your funny little hats, and you guys can drink grape juice and you can have wine and figure out all those little minutia. But here's kind of like the game plan. And I know it's a little heretical, but I really do. I'm concerned that that's the real root of a lot of these like commandments and parables.
Yeah, no, dude, I actually agree with you. And trust me, dude, it's like a lot of stuff, all of my work is heretical, and but you're right. I mean, you're right. The New Testament people call it a book. It's not a book. It's a collection of writings.
The mixtape.
And it's a mixtape. It's a mixtape, and a lot of stuff was left out. And more importantly, and this is what most of my work does, it deconstructs all of this, right? And more importantly, like, not only was all of this put together by the Constantinian dynasty and the Council of Nicaea and these nefarious priesthoods that did want to mediate control between us and God, but worse than all of that, I believe, is we misinterpreted a lot of the ancient stuff that went along with the New Testament and Old Testament. And that's what my entire Lucifer Mystery Revealed book was about. It's like, dude, there never even was a Lucifer in the book to begin with. Like, we fanaticized that whole thing and ran with it, and it gave the church so much more power over us. So, like, worse than the overt control that they are obviously asserting on us is the basic human error of trying to understand what our ancestors and ancients were trying to tell us. And so you're right in saying that the Bible has been used as a manual for control. But for us, again, who are trying to really seek out the message, when you go past the dogma and the institution and stop, being so afraid of the Bible being the word of God, and if you question it, you're going to go to hell. If you go past all that and realize that it's all man-made, it's all man put together, and go deep into the messages and start analyzing the actual historicity behind the Bible, the historicity behind the original Christians, the Essenes, the Gnostics, and all of that, and who the real Jesus was and what he was really trying to say, when you get to the root of it, I think there is some gems and beneficial help and value there.
I might have to censor this question out, but I'm going to ask it because I'll have to censor it out of YouTube. I'll leave it on everything else. What do you think about suicide?
Definitely don't do it. It's the funny response to that is always like, you're going to die anyway, so just wait it out, buddy, but I'm assuming your question is like, is it bad or good? Like, as far as
is there some sort of like, you got to pay some bigger price for taking the shortcut?
Yeah, all strangely, all like mythological and religious systems kind of universally agree that deleting yourself is a shortcut and will create some kind of karmic debt, and it should not be done.
There's two that don't.
Really?
Yeah. One of them maybe doesn't count. It's the Bavarian Illuminati, but if a lot of people don't know that their saint was the patron saint of suicide, although it's probably has more to do with like, if you get caught, you should be okay to just like, eggs yourself out so that someone doesn't get it. But there was another group, man, I know it wasn't the Chaldeans, but there was another group that I'll remember as soon as we're done talking. But it was essentially, you could get yourself to a certain point. You could purify yourself of all sin. And once you were completely pure of sin, it was almost like this logical conclusion of, if I do one other thing now, I'm going to be accumulating more sin. Like, it was a serious process that they would go through like many years. And once they achieved like the perfect free from sin state, it was like, all right, let's leave while we're ahead. And they would head out, and that was kind of like an acceptable version of it. And I think that there's also been some religious times, like under duress, like it's actually better to jump off this cliff than to let like the Romans come in and do what they're ever going to do with the rest of them. So like there's all these like little shortcuts, but that one in particular of like, if you get to like the pinnacle of sin-free living, then it's almost like this cheat code, this shortcut that like, I don't know how it works. You know what I mean? I guess that's why it's a fascinating thing to me, because of like almost a universal don't do that. And I get from the like the stability aspect, right? Like if your religion is like, no, it's fine. And all of a sudden, like, where are all people going? And you know what I mean? It's kind of like the Heaven's Gate thing, right?
It's interesting. Actually, now that I think about it more, I mean, you're right. Because like we have like the whole jihad thing, right? Which is like more of like a modern adaptation. So, and
right, that's a good example.
Yeah, and like the dying for God idea. And in a strange way, Jesus committed suicide, you know?
He knew he was going to die for what he was doing. Actually, we're going back to the Bibles. Fuck it.
No,
Uh,
but like, I mean,
Good.
it all connects, and you've honestly got me thinking right now, because it's like, I mean, of course, we don't want our people, our loved ones to kill themselves. We don't want them to do that because we love them and we want to have great times with them. But spiritually speaking, there may be more to this, and it might not be so black and white, because in like some of the more Eastern systems, there is some power to self-deletion. For example, self-immolation. We just saw that recently with that Marine guy, right? Aaron Bushnell, who lit himself on fire for right. And so that practice goes all the way back to the Tibetan monks. Actually, I have one tattooed on my arm right here. Most people think that that's Aang from Avatar. You can't really see it, but it's not. It's actually a representation of Thich Duck. I think I'm pronouncing that right. He's the dude that's on the Rage Against the Machine cover.
It's sad. That's the only way that I would even know is like, oh, the Rage Against the Machine guy, like the CD that I bought at Circuit City. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did a paper on him back in high school. And real quick, it's a very that photo is an interesting story. So the guy who captured it was an American photographer and journalist, and he was following the monks with another group of Americans for like weeks, and nothing was really happening. So most of the guys started leaving back to America. But this guy, Thich Duck, pulled this journalist to the side and told him, "Hey, man, something very awesome is going to happen soon. Trust me, just stick around." And it was the dude that ended up setting himself on fire. And so he stuck around, and that day came, and he self-immolated, and he got those famous shots. And I love that story because in that particular instance, Thich Duck didn't budge, man. He didn't make a sound. He didn't move. And so in that sense, if you're going to do it in that sense, where it's like you're exerting immense, at that point, you're not just like deleting yourself out of misery. At that point, you've reached a state of enlightenment where you are like actively, deliberately leaving this realm and going to the next, which I think whatever God or gods that are waiting for us on the other side would respect.
Yeah, I remember the name of it was called Endora. I just can't remember what the religious sect was that did it. It was some Christian religious sect. But yeah, it's a fascinating concept to me. I'm not endorsing it. We're saying don't do it. Hang out, chill with us. There's going to be like cake and donuts afterwards. So like don't leave just yet.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating concept because I always wonder is it really bad, evil, karmic debt, or is that just another version of like, hey, we can't have our people doing this. You got to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is too, like it's all complex, man, because what is killing you? Abrupt, obvious version of it, but really the world that we live in slowly kills us. And so in a weird way, like we are committing self-deletion when we eat all of these toxic foods and live this toxic lifestyle. Like that does play a part in our demise and our death. So like it's like an ignorant suicide. It's a prolonged and ignorant suicide. So there's a lot going on, man. I think it really boils down to having a clear connection to God, a clear connection to our mind and our body, and the world that we live in, the sick world that we live in, at every turn is trying to disconnect that connection to God, disconnect that connection to our mind and our body. But when you really build it and really start to detoxify yourself and really build that strong connection, man, like you start to really wake up and realize like, oh man, like everything out here is trying to kill me. And when we partake in it, it's like it is a weird, slow, prolonged suicide.
Well, I mean, oxidation is what causes organic cells to decay. And unfortunately, we kind of have to keep breathing oxygen. So just the very fact of inhaling oxygen in your body means you're slowly decaying almost always. So it'll, kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I got to ask you if there's like a 12 or 13-year-old, esoteric Eddie Jr. out there, or like esoteric Charlie, whatever the hell his name is. Like, what books would you wish that like you had dropped on you when you were like 12 or 13? If it wasn't Behold the Pale Horse or Alex Jones, like what would be your top 3 to give you a head start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm looking at my mini bookshelf right now. I have most of my books locked away in storage right now, but let's see here. I think a great place to start would be Queen Lady. I think Queen. What's her name? Her last name's
Latifah?
Queenborough.
Just
Which
kidding.
one?
I said Queen Latifah. No.
Yeah. No. Well, the book is called. It's a two series. It's a 2 volumes called The Occult Theocracy. Occult Theocracy. It's 2 volumes. It's a great place to start. It gives you a lot of information. Great place to start. Another one would be one of my favorites that actually I started with was Nothing in This Book is True by Bob Frisell. That's another great place to start. And a third one, just for fun, let me see. Breakaway Civilizations by Joseph P. Farrell. Yeah, those 3, if I had to say anything. They're all very practical, very information based, and give you great place to start and give you a great sense of the world that we're actually living in.
I appreciate that. I don't think I think I've heard of the third one. I might have heard it on like an audiobook. The first 2 I hadn't heard of. So I'll do my best to remember to link them down below too, if anyone wants to see like Esoteric Eddie's, suggested reading list. So I'm going to start wrapping it up here, but everyone loves this segment, so I'll never be able to skip it. And let's just get into it, and I'll explain the rules in a second.
Hey, conspiracy buffs, I double dare you to take some PCP, the Paranormal Conspiracy Probe. On your marks, get set, and go!
All right, rules are really easy. I'm just going to say a conspiracy theory or topic, and you're going to give me a rating from 1 to 10. 10 means you believe in it, and 1 means you don't believe in it. Pretty simple, right?
Okay.
All right, dinosaurs.
1.
Flat Earth.
5.
Arctic Wall.
5.
Fox Saga.
Say 7.
Demons.
3.
In case it matters, daemons.
That's more like a 10.
Angels.
3.
Bin Laden was buried at sea out of respect to his culture.
Oh shit, I just heard that today. Out of respect for his culture? Man, get the fuck out of here. 1.
Well, okay, Osama bin Laden was buried at sea, period.
I'd give that one a good 5. Still on the fence, I know.
Oswald killed Kennedy.
Oh, dude, 1.
Oswald took a shot at Kennedy.
I could say like 5 or 6. Yeah.
Humans have stepped foot on the moon in the last 50 years. Or last 100 years.
Fuck. I think right now I'm gonna just say 1, dude. Yeah.
How about the moon exists at all?
Shit. I'll give it a good 7.
We've been visited by aliens.
10.
Reptilian, interdimensional shape-shifting aliens.
Say 2.
What about shapeshifters, period, living on the planet? Someone that can shift into a human and then back out of a human.
Say 1.
What about little gray aliens with like the big black eyes, the Roswell style?
Yeah. Gray aliens. Oof. Yeah, I'm gonna say right now, I'm say 4.
What about Atlantis?
Say 2.
What about HARP technology being used to like trigger earthquakes and volcanoes and everything?
10.
Voice to skull technology?
10.
Project Monarch?
Which one was that again?
Project Monarch is the one that basically Stranger Things. Let's just say Stranger Things.
Yeah, 10, dude.
What about deep underground military bases that are like actually in use right now?
10.
celebrity clones.
Yeah, I say 6.
Spirit cooking, but real.
Give it a good 7. Yeah.
Do you think that they have a basement in that pizza parlor in DC that I won't say the name of?
I'm gonna give that one 1.
What about that whole situation with like the pizza pie doorway thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 8.
What about QAnon?
Give it like a 3.
Do you think there was ever an actual Q, like in a single individual Q?
No.
Bigfoot 1 to 10.
2.
Any cryptids 1 to 10.
8.
Aliens help build the pyramids.
Actually, I'll probably give this one like a 3.
Birds aren't real.
Or 1.
JFK's head exploded from reaching enlightenment.
That's hilarious. 10, dude, just for fun.
The Catholic Eucharist is actually a mushroom.
I'd say 8.
Stoned ape theory.
10.
All right, well that was good, man. I think that might be the most questions that I was able to rank out. You were a sport, bro, going through all of those.
Hell yeah.
Started out on dinosaurs, though. Here's my final one: dragons, fire-breathing, flying dragons. Any point in history.
8.
Why do dragons get a higher score than dinosaurs?
Well, the reason I said low on dinosaurs is because I believe that the idea of them is false, and if anything, they were fucking dragons.
So what makes you think 8 for fire breathing, specifically fire breathing flying dragon?
Well, fire breathing, I don't know, but I mean, it's funny. This is something I've been diving into a little bit lately, and I have a friend who's like obsessed with the idea of dragons, so like she kind of forces me to look at some of this shit sometimes. But one of the reasons is like this whole question about like, yeah, why did the Chinese put so much like importance on the idea of a dragon, and then all the other animals in their calendar were real, and then we're just going to just go with a random mythological one. But then we have this whole idea of dinosaurs that have been depicted. So I feel like it's a mesh between dinosaurs and dragons. And I do believe that giant motherfucking reptile like things did exist, but again, nothing's really black or white for me. It's like I do think that dinosaurs were more bird-like than reptilian. And so when you put all that together, like these big giant bird-like fucking creatures, and then dragons and reptiles, and the world of animals is fucking fascinating. I love the world of animals, and it's clear that in ancient times, there was probably some wild motherfucking animals that are now extinct, like megalodons, bro. Like that shit fucking blows my mind. Like just giant fucking sharks and shit like that. Like, so, yeah, I'm just saying, I think our idea of dinosaurs is false, and it does play into a weird rabbit hole narrative that incorporates NASA and space and all that bullshit. But that these giant ass creatures did exist, and the reason why they're not being explained properly is, for one, we probably don't even fully understand them yet, and two, it would unlock a whole nother part of our history that they're trying to hide as well, having to do with like who we really are and where we come from prior to the recent cataclysms.
Do you think we're in end times?
No.
How far are we from end times?
I think end times are just always it's always capable. It's always possible. The reason why is the whole idea of end times comes from the book of Revelation, which was allegedly written by, the Apostle John when he was 70, held captive off the island at the island of Patmos or whatever, right? So like, if we believe in the book of Revelation, that means we have to like believe in the whole thing, kind of, right? And so like, to me, the book of Revelation is a psychedelic piece that is partially speaking about the Caesarian dynasty, the Caesars, and everything that was happening at that time. And then the other half is more so of like him realizing what that power would become if we let it run rampant. And so that's the way I see it. It's like a psychedelic piece talking about the one world government system of his time and what it could potentially become if we allowed it to run rampant. So at any point, the book of Revelation and the end times can happen. It's more of a blueprint, a manuscript of how bad things can get if we let it.
What do you think, in this final question, and I know this is going to be a little out of left field, what do you think David Koresh thought he was doing when he kept saying he was open the 7 seals? Like, was he going crazy? Do you think he tapped into something that made him crazy? Like, what was going on with that whole thing?
Yeah, I think he was just crazy. Because, yeah, this stuff is fascinating and very intriguing, and it will drive people fucking crazy because there's all this weird, mystical, esoteric, and occult stuff that's in the books, and when you read too much into it, that's when you start spiraling and going crazy. And so for me, that's why it's like I've gone that way. I've gone crazy when, early on in my journey of learning all this stuff. I did have like a psychosis and a Kundalini awakening, because of this stuff. So it's dangerous, man, when you read too much into it. And so, yeah, I think he was just crazy, reading too much into it and thought that he was opening the 7 seals. Like, for example, bro, when I was in middle school, I used to get high and just read the end times. I used to love reading the book of Revelation. And there's a strange story in there that people don't really bring up, having to do with the 2 witnesses in end times. And this is how I always knew for myself that we weren't in end times, because this prophecy has yet to been fulfilled. In the end times, there's going to be 2 witnesses, as they're called, who are going to go around preaching the gospel, and then they're going to get killed, and they're going to be left dead on the street for 3 days, and the whole world will see them. And how can the whole world see them? The internet, TikTok, I don't know. But the whole world is going to be able to see them for 3 days. Nobody's going to touch their bodies. And then after the 3rd day, they're going to rise from the dead, and they're going to fly to heaven, or they're going to be taken to heaven. And I was so baked back in the day that I had a best friend at the time, and I told him, I was like, bro, we are the 2 witnesses. We need to go to Israel somehow. We need to find a way to Israel and become the 2 witnesses so Jesus can come back. Like, so yeah, dude, you can read too much into this stuff, but I think it's mostly metaphorical, mostly symbolic, and not to be taken so literal.
It's funny because it reminds me of people that do like the past age regressions, and it's like everyone's always Caesar and no one's ever like Caesar's chamber pot guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it would be dope to be like, yo, homie, we got to go to Jerusalem. We got to like figure all this out because there's these 2 witnesses, and I'm the dude that's going to be his sandwich artist when he gets to town. You know what I mean? Like, I got to be there to make him a sub, bro. Like, that's my calling, like no one's ever that guy. Everyone's always like the guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that dude's probably more important. Like, that'd be a funny like little spin-off, dude. Like, yeah,
you gotta be fed well if you're gonna be one of the witnesses and dying rise to heaven. You want to do one on a full stomach. And this is a great time to mention our HelloFresh sponsorship. No, I'm just kidding about that.
I'm like, oh shit.
I wish we were that big. So tell people once again where they can find Esoteric Eddie, whatever books that you want to push, like do it all now. We'll link them all below.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. YouTube at Esoteric Eddie TV, Instagram, Esoteric Eddie, and everything else, books, merchandise, and all of that good stuff at esotericeddie.com.
Word up. And then check out this little advertisement for The Chosen One. It comes out. If you're watching this now and you didn't get the early Patreon version, which you should be getting the Patreon version, it's $3. I might be bumping it because Biden the comics, does Biden that kind of, so it might go up to 5. It might be 5 and 7. I don't know. But if you're watching it now, go to chosenone.com. If you're watching in the future, it might already be running. You better hurry up now. You might have missed out on all the like really cool stuff, but chosenone.com, check it out. And thanks again, Eddie, for chilling with me, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you to everybody listening. Fucking love you, homie. Love y'all. Peace.
Chosenone.com. Go visit chosenone.com. It's easy to remember if you just sing along. Chosenone.com. Go visit chosenone.com. The chosen one. Yes, he is the chosen one. He's got his own comic, and now he's got his own song. Cause he's the chosen one. Yes, he is the chosen one. Go buy a copy at chosenone.com. Chosenone.com. Go visit chosenone.com. It's easy to remember if you just sing along. Chosenone.com. Go visit chosenone.com.